Okay, here's a quick review of the Arab good feelings, part of U.S. history. Here's some questions that will be on the quiz for my class, but may be helpful to the general public if you're studying the Arab good feelings. Um, Analyze, how did the Monroe Doctrine help shape U.S. foreign policy? Well, it shaped U.S. foreign policy for the next 100 years as it establishes that we will defend, the United States will defend not only its own borders, but the entire Western Hemisphere. And that world superpowers, at that time Europe, but now it really stretches on to today, are not allowed to mess with the smaller countries that surround the United States or that stay in their back and are in the backyard of the United States, either in North and South America. And in return, we agreed that we would not colonize or mess with European countries at that time as well. Explain what sectionalism is. What's the main issue that caused it in America in the 1800s? Well, sectionalism is when the nation divides over issues against itself. Of course, this will eventually lead to the Civil War in the United States, but of course the main issue that caused sectionalism was slavery. To describe how American culture developed in the early 1800s, well, when we had peace in the era of good feelings, people were able to turn and develop art and literature and music, and some great folk tales and short stories were created. Some great novels were created, like The Last of the Mohicans, folk tales, the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. And the Hudson River School began to, artists who were following that style of painting did some great paintings at that time as well. Think about Thomas Cole and Caleb Bingham. Explain the American system. The American system was an idea by Henry Clay to make America self-sufficient by creating tariffs to protect our goods from lower-priced goods from overseas, and by creating transportation systems, roads and canals, to help ideas and goods travel more freely in America, thus boosting the economy. That kind of helps answer number 5. Improving the transportation system helps the economy because it allows people to travel quicker. It allows goods to be cheaper. The Erie Canal, $100 worth of goods to be traveled before the canal would only cost $10 to travel with the canal. So it really lowered prices, but it also allowed ideas to flow and travel and people to get the tools and goods that they needed to help build the economy. Predict, do you think the Missouri Compromise will work to solve the issue of slavery in the new states? Of course it won't. The only way to solve the issue of slavery is to end slavery. So we skated around that. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. If you think the United States had a huge wound on slavery that will cause millions of people to suffer and eventually lead to a terrible war, and we put a little Band-Aid on it with the Missouri Compromise, and of course will not solve the problem, just make it worse in the long run. The corrupt bargain was when Henry Clay and John Quincy Adams were accused by Andrew Jackson supporters of making a deal to give Adams the presidency, and in return Henry Clay would receive the Secretary of State position. Henry Clay would deliver the votes in Congress to give the presidency of a very close election to Adams over Jackson. Jackson and his followers reacted to that by making Clay and Adams' life miserable over the next 4 years and reorganizing and eventually winning the election of 1828. Here's some review questions that we'll be covering on the quiz. How important is Marbury versus Madison? Well, Marbury versus Madison is extremely important because it establishes the power of the Supreme Court to have judicial review and to review laws made by other branches of government and actions by other branches of government to see whether they're following the Constitution. Are Lewis and Clark American heroes? Well, that's for you to decide, but you need to argue it either way. But they definitely did a great exploration into unknown territory, and they found all kinds of new land and new creatures and met with Native Americans, and they documented it all, opening up the West. So you can decide for yourself on that one, but they definitely did a lot. Identify important people and events from 1790 to 1800. Well, this is just the beginning of our country. You can talk about the precedents that George Washington administration created. You can talk about how George Washington left office. You can talk about the Shays Rebellion and the Whiskey Rebellion, the Depression of 1790. So there's lots of things to talk about there. You just need to study up on them and decide which one you want to talk about. Election of 1800, very significant because it was the first time two political parties we switched political parties in the United States, and we did so peacefully. And it was a very close election. It was basically a tie, and it took 36 votes of Congress for Congress to pick Thomas Jefferson over Aaron Burr, excuse me. And so that was a huge victory, and it was a change from the Federalists led by John Adams over to the Democratic Republicans led by Thomas Jefferson. Views of Jefferson and Hamilton, complete opposite. Jefferson wants a simple, free country based on rural values, with freedom of the people protected and the common people having power and democracy above all else. Hamilton wants a powerful, strong urban society with industrialization, a strong economy, a world power ruled by the elites. He wants the national bank. Jefferson does in the beginning. The list goes on and on. So you can definitely work on that and get that down. Identify how George Washington and his cabinet stabilized our country. Well, George Washington had great leadership as president. He set the precedent of leaving office after 2 terms. He set the precedent that we will not have riots and every time there's disagreement in the nation. He was a strong president. He used compromise, and Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton moved the country forward under his leadership. So they did lots of great things. So I hope this was helpful. You can use it. Just play it over and over again. Just listen to it. Let it soak into your brain.